KYRA SIVERTSON, known from the OKY Baby channel, recently appeared on Isaac Rachel's podcast to finally share her side of the story about the highly publicized breakup with Oscar and the complicated drama involving Preston. Isaac, a former NFL player turned podcast host, hyped this interview as his juiciest yet, but fans were left feeling it didn't quite deliver on the promise.
Just land the juiciest guest we've ever had on Don't Worry, I'll Ask. Well, tomorrow you can watch this episode, and let me just say this. The person that we're having on has not done any interviews or talked about their situation at all for years. So this is an exclusive. We're talking about somebody that was at the pinnacle of their career, 1.5 million subscribers, to now public scrutiny, accusation. I mean, there's literally whole pages and snark threads that are just talking about this person.
Isaac started the episode by opening up about how he and his wife have been longtime viewers of OKY Baby, closely following KYRA and Oscar's journey since the channel began.
So I know a lot about KYRA. I've seen the ups and downs. And most recently, it feels like it's just been exclusively bad for KYRA. It started off with a breakup video, which we'll talk about in the episode, with her and Oscar after having 4 kids together, being together for years. They post this breakup video that really felt like it was like in real time. Come to find out, she was dating her employee's husband? Question mark? Like if you're hearing it and you're like, what's going on? That's a proper reaction to that.
This personal connection made it seem like the interview would go deep and uncover new details, but the conversation mostly skimmed the surface of what fans really wanted to know. One of the most explosive parts of the story is that KYRA's relationship with Preston was far from casual. Preston was actually married to her best friend, Hannah. KYRA and Hannah were extremely close, sharing a bond so strong they even got matching tattoos. This made the entire situation much more personal and painful.
And then come to find out, she was having threesomes, all these like random things that came together to create the story of KYRA that really looked bad. She had essentially 8 years of bliss, making tons of money, top of the YouTube world, 1.5 million subscribers, to literally her whole world crashing down.
KYRA admitted during the interview that she had an emotional affair with Preston while still with Oscar, which was a significant revelation. Yet, when it came to other hot topics, like Hannah's viral diss track that took shots at KYRA or the swirling rumors about KYRA's current pregnancy, Isaac barely touched on these points. He also asked about the timeline of when KYRA started seeing Preston after Hannah's breakup, but KYRA's answers were vague and Isaac didn't press her further. This left listeners with a lot of unanswered questions and speculation.
Anytime we have somebody on and ask them these tough questions, they're going to give the best version of the answers. They're going to give the answers that, 1, sound the best, and they're going to give the answers that, 2, in their mind, they have formulated and believe to be true. Now, KYRA gave us a lot of information. She didn't shy away from any question. But that being said, there could be a lot of information that she left out. Because again, she's giving the best version for herself. Now, my conclusion when I was leaving the interview, I was excited that she was so vulnerable. I just appreciated her coming on. And I value somebody that's willing to look at adversity and look at criticism and public scrutiny and deal with it. And that's exactly what she...
The interview did briefly touch on some heavier topics, like KYRA's childhood trauma and the recent death of her mother, but these were only mentioned in passing. There was no deep dive into these emotional areas, which seemed like missed opportunities given how much these events could explain about KYRA's struggles and choices. It felt like a lot was left unspoken.
We already recorded the episode. She was extremely vulnerable and we talked about everything. There's nothing in her life that happened that we did not touch on.
KYRA also shared some insight into how OKY Baby started, revealing she was already pregnant when the channel launched, making her and Oscar some of the first teen parents to document their lives on YouTube. She talked about how much she emotionally relied on her audience for social support and self-confidence.
Essentially, 3 years ago, I was fired from my job, but I loved my job and was like, no, I'll do anything. Please don't fire me.
So do you feel like you lost everything 3 years ago as you knew it? It's just totally different?
Yes, but I don't think necessarily all in a negative way. I think that's what was so weird too, is I was so happy. I felt finally with so many different areas, not just a breakup that had happened,
Yeah.
So many things. I was like, okay, I'm finally just, everything's gonna just be great now. And then it was so the opposite.
Yeah.
And that was hey, how that was supposed to work out, you know? And so, yeah, I definitely feel like I lost.
When her followers turned against her 3 years ago, it was devastating, and she described feeling isolated and angry, wishing she hadn't become so emotionally dependent on her viewers. This shed light on the complicated, parasocial relationship between creators and their audiences, showing how painful it can be when the support suddenly fades.
But then also I think I had like an attachment to my audience like I did a partner, and I felt like I lost everything. So I wish I would have taken what opportunities YouTube had given me from the beginning and like grew within myself with those opportunities rather than like building such an attachment, which it can go both ways, because I also think building that attachment is what helps me grow, right? Like connecting with your audience and stuff. But I think I'm still going through that phase right now of like recovering from disconnecting with like people I was so close with, you know, like my audience, which sounds kind of silly because it was a lot of people. Like, did you really have an attachment to all those people? But I felt like I did.
Regarding her breakup with Oscar, KYRA admitted that their intense focus on creating content put a major strain on their relationship. They grew apart as their lives took different directions, and YouTube was a significant factor in that divide. Despite everything, KYRA confessed she still loves making videos and can't imagine stopping, even though navigating the past few years has been incredibly difficult.
Like, I'm so angry that I did this. I'm so angry that like at the internet and like these people that are like, oh, I love your videos. And it's like, no, you don't, because one day you would like instantly turn your back on me. But it's like, yeah, of course, they're just your viewer. And I'm like, no, they were my friend.
She also expressed regret about sharing the breakup publicly.
What went into releasing those? Because again, it felt so raw.
Too raw. Like it should have never went on the internet. No, I think that the thing with that video is, and this is like, to be clear, my point of view, obviously, like I don't want to speak for him and like what he thinks, but I don't think we did really talk about it. I think that was the first time that we sat down and talked about our breakup, and it was on camera. Like that's the crazy thing. And I think that you can kind of tell, you can tell some of the things Oscar's like shocked by, but then I had a lot of his resentment at that point in my life for him of like, you're shocked by that? Like, hello, you know? And I think a lot of girls go through that, and it's not necessarily that that puts Oscar in the wrong either, like with not knowing those things. It just, yeah, that was like the first time that we talked about it.
At the time, it felt like a natural progression since they had shared almost everything else, but looking back, she cringes at how overshared the breakup was. There were several follow-up videos documenting their pain and feelings, and even some joint videos during that difficult period. In hindsight, she wishes they hadn't put all that out there.
We had like a conversation once about, do we think that we're gonna split up? And then maybe there was like a little bit of conversation in between, but of like, yeah, no, this is like really done. But the first time that we didn't have a lot of those in-depth conversations about our relationship. And one of our biggest ones was on camera.
Overall, the interview offered some insight but left fans wanting more clarity on the big questions: the viral diss track, the pregnancy rumors, and the exact timeline of the relationships involved. It felt like KYRA carefully chose what to reveal and what to keep private, while Isaac didn't push hard enough to get the full story. For many listeners, this felt like a missed opportunity to get the juicy details everyone was waiting for. After their breakup, KYRA explained that the plan was for her and Oscar to keep living together while continuing to film OK, Baby, aiming to show what co-parenting looked like in real life. At that point, they still had a pretty decent friendship and genuinely thought their new arrangement could be interesting for viewers. KYRA also gave Oscar a lot of credit, saying he was the creative force behind the channel, the one doing the editing and shaping the content. Once he stepped back, she said she lost a lot of her own confidence, which eventually led her to start her own project, Beneath the Sheets. Despite what some people might assume about the podcast being focused on sexuality, KYRA made it clear that wasn't the case at all, and she has no regrets about launching it.
I really enjoyed doing the podcast. I have a lot of great memories from it. I mentally was able to discover a lot about myself. Again, not just sexually. Like, actually, I didn't try anything sexually new while doing that podcast. But again, I like, people, you know, take that podcast and are like, maybe that's why she ended up with Preston, or like that. Even I think at one point, Oscar was like, I feel like there was like a turning point once the podcast started, you know, and People are right. There was. I suddenly realized I am my own person. I'm not just like, okay, baby. And like, I actually have passions of my own. And I did discover myself, you know, a little bit. And that was the start of.
Isaac finally brought up the question everyone's been waiting for, the timing of KYRA's relationship with Preston.
Wondering like what the timeline was.
Well, here's the thing. Even the reality is messed up. The reality is I am married to him, and he was somebody who was my employee at one point, and then she was my best friend, and that was her partner. So no matter what, that is not okay. And trust me, if I could not have him be my husband, like I would have not.
Right.
Why would I have chosen that for myself, you know? But I think that people take that, even though it's already dramatic enough, in my opinion, and really want to spice it up. And that's where like it just gets so out of control, and there's so many different narratives. And I actually have clarified it quite a few times, and people are like, why don't you just like say what happened? I'm like, no, but I have. It's just, it's not what you want it to be. So it's not the truth, but it is the truth. It's just not as interesting as what you want.
But let's double down here, because I want to know, like, when was the first time that you looked at Preston in this spectrum, this timeline, and said, I'm into that guy?
It's funny, we've talked about this with each other. Like, when did you like really know? Here's the thing, and this took me until, I want to say about a year ago to realize, Preston and I never were together while Oscar and I were together. Like, that was not, there wasn't this secret relationship going on. Like, I've never been that way. I thought that I wanted to be with Oscar forever, and I wanted that with my whole being, you know? And I think so did he. I think we both secretly in our own minds knew that wasn't gonna work, but that's what we wanted. And so that was never a thing of Preston and I being like in the background. But I think now looking back, you know, we had a lot of like game nights weekly as like a, what do you call that?
Like couples
night. Yeah. And him and I always did get along really well. He was socially awkward, so it took a while. But yeah, like I think we had a connection that I didn't notice at the time. It's not like when he walked in the room, I was like, oh my God, he's so hot. In fact, I never found him unattractive, but Preston, if like people know the people I've dated, he's not typically who I go for. So it's not like the first time I saw him, I fainted and was like, I gotta have him. Although that sounds fun, that's just not the way it went. And so there wasn't like a specific moment, but I do think that throughout those game nights, I did notice like, oh, we do laugh together. We do have fun together. And so I can admit, I think that there was a little bit of an emotional connection earlier on than I would like to admit. It wasn't like a year before or months before, but I think especially towards the end when things were like really bad between Oscar and I, there was more of an emotional connection happening than I wanted to admit, you know?
KYRA was a bit vague, but eventually acknowledged having an emotional affair with Preston while still with Oscar. Fans online had been speculating for years, especially after analyzing their game night videos, so her admission wasn't a huge surprise. If both KYRA and Preston were involved with other people during that time, then it's fair to call what happened an emotional affair. It's worth considering whether that emotional connection with Preston gave KYRA the push she needed to leave Oscar. Their relationship was rocky for a long time, but she never left until that point. Emotional affairs can offer a sense of comfort and validation that might be missing in a current relationship. KYRA described Preston as someone who really listened to her and made her feel understood, which probably made it easier for her to walk away from the difficult situation she was in with Oscar. The emotional support from Preston likely filled a void she'd been feeling. In her breakup video, KYRA insisted there was no cheating, and Oscar had replied vaguely with "well," which led to years of speculation. Many thought he was referring to Preston or another person, but KYRA clarified that wasn't the case. According to her, Oscar was talking about a different situation where she was consoling another guy. This explanation wasn't new, she had addressed it before. Then KYRA dropped a big revelation. She told Oscar she was sleeping with Preston.
I actually was the one to call Oscar and tell him, hey, I'm sleeping with Preston. And that was like maybe 3 months after Oscar and I had separated. So I was the one to tell Oscar.
She admitted that she and Preston began hooking up about 3 months after her breakup with Oscar. Since they split in December, that means their relationship started around March. KYRA even posted online saying, "I'm dating Preston and we've been seeing each other since March." Sometimes friends who are there for you during tough times turn into more.
Preston and I were strictly having intercourse when he came over, and I felt the need to share that because we were friends and overshared everything. I do cringe a lot about some of that stuff.
A viewer pointed out how quickly that moved from breakup to dating, noting Preston and Hannah filed for divorce in April.
That decision to sleep with Preston imploded your life, though, from the sense of like your friendships, the way people perceive you, the names people will call you.
It became my identity. I slept with somebody once, and it became, at that time, because I didn't know he was going to end up being my husband. But yeah, who I chose to sleep with one time became my entire identity.
KYRA also opened up about her struggles during that period, admitting she hated herself, had no self-confidence, and felt like she was at her lowest point.
And then Preston had recently, I think like 2 months before, separated from his ex. And because he was the one to choose to leave, he was the only one, and we were around each other because he helped me move because he had a truck. And Oscar was in Florida, I believe, when I was like moving out. And so he was helping me. Plus, he was my friend and he lived near. So like he would come over and like build the kids' beds or whatever.
Yeah.
She corrected herself, saying she wasn't craving attention exactly, but wanted to feel loved and accepted. She also mentioned that Preston had broken up with Hannah 2 months earlier. Isaac wondered why KYRA would call her best friend's ex to help her move and assemble kids' beds instead of asking Hannah herself. KYRA explained Preston had broken up with Hannah 2 months earlier, but this didn't quite add up for some viewers. It suggested something deeper than just friendship, especially since KYRA had already admitted to the emotional affair before leaving Oscar and before Preston left Hannah.
And naturally, when that happens, you know, two single people that are like severely depressed and everybody hates them, we ended up sleeping together. I don't want to say it wasn't a good choice because I love him and I'm glad that I did it now. But at the time, should I have done that? Probably not, you know? But then look, I did something that I shouldn't have done. And now it's the best thing that's ever happened to me. So it's so difficult to like, that's the thing. We both know it's wrong. That's not how this should be. But how do you, it's so hard to find somebody in your life. And I think you only get about one opportunity truly where you find somebody that you can be any version of yourself and they're going to love you unconditionally. You're going to laugh together, but you're not just going to laugh together. You're also going to like sexually have, you know, things that are in common and like all those things. So although it's so bad, it's ended up being so good. So it's just, it's so difficult, but neither of us are like sitting here like, oh, who cares? And we're proud of it. Like, no, it sucks. We still have to pay the consequences. When we go certain places, they're like, how'd you meet? And even if they know nothing about it, we have to be like, how do we tell people we meet, you know? And then like our kids, you know, we, with our youngest, or well, I guess ours is the only kid that's from both of us. Do we tell her when she grows up? Like, how do you go about that? And it's like, yeah, my other kids I'm very transparent with. They know, like I want, people need to know, our kids need to know that sometimes things don't happen the way that you want or that you think, but they still happen.
Calling Preston over for such a personal favor felt more intimate than a casual favor, giving off more than friendly vibes. There also seemed to be some confusion in KYRA's timeline. She initially said Preston broke up with Hannah 2 months before her split with Oscar, but then said Preston came to her for advice about leaving his relationship, implying he hadn't ended things yet.
But I think that what people maybe don't realize is sometimes it does happen in friend groups where, so I left Oscar and then without like going into detail about Preston and his ex's relationship because that's their business.
Totally.
I think at that time he was like, I'm not very happy, but how do you do it? Because,
Did you guys talk about that? Did he ever say, how'd you do that?
Yeah. And he had it pretty good. And so I think he felt really guilty leaving. Like I should be happy, you know? And I never told him to leave, to be clear. That it wasn't discussed like that.
Fans noticed the contradiction. Isaac didn't press the issue and kept the conversation moving. Later, KYRA clarified that when Preston asked for advice, they had already broken up, though she didn't make that clear at first.
It is interesting though, because it seems like you guys had enough of a relationship where he was willing to confide in you and say, hey, you did this. Now I'm kind of feeling this way. I'm going to go talk to KYRA.
So yes and no. We didn't ever actually, even though we were all friends, there wasn't a friendship that was separate between him and I.
Okay.
We didn't text like separately, you know, it was like I texted her for plans or whatever. And then we texted as like a group occasionally, but there was no like Preston and I having text conversations. And so once we did get close, that was already after both of us had separated from our relationships because we bonded, I guess. Kind of feels
bonding.
Like,
trauma bonding.
Over the fact that, which sounds so ridiculous and like self-pity, but like over being the bad guys. Like, okay, you get it. Like, especially, I mean, in his situation was a lot different than mine, but either way, we both left people that we were with and we found a lot of comfort in each other in that way. So when he came to me, they had already been broken up. Did come to me after that about like, do we live together after? And I was like, no, I tried that. I wouldn't recommend it, you know? But I never recommended him to leave her.
Yeah, he's not like, KYRA, should we break up? And you're like, yeah, please. By the way.
And there was even actually a point where she came over to my house and he was there and we were already sleeping together. And
did she know?
Yeah. I had many conversations with her about sleeping with him.
What do those conversations look like? Where it's like, hey, I'm sleeping with your ex-husband.
Weird. Like very uncomfortable. But at the time, also I was disassociating. So I was like very direct, very straightforward, said all the facts. But I also think that it was a little bit heartless because I was disassociated. It was just like,
you're also in this emotional and like sexual high because you're with the new partner. So you're kind of like, I don't care.
No, because I loved
so?
her. Like I really, that's what was also really difficult. Like we weren't having a good time in our friendship when him and I started. Like we had a lot of our own issues at that point. Again, because everything was going so bad in my life, I'm like self-sabotaging and we weren't getting along for other reasons. And so yeah, our friendship wasn't really looking great at that time anyways.
KYRA reflected on what came after, sharing that she and Hannah had a moment where they hoped maybe someday they could be friends again. She said Hannah wasn't just any friend, but one of the few true friends she'd ever had, and she'll always mourn losing that friendship. Beyond losing Hannah, KYRA also lost the relationship she thought would last forever with Oscar. She described facing life alone with 4 kids, shouldering all the financial responsibilities, and said she felt like she went psychotic, wishing she had been on more medication during that time. Isaac then shifted the topic to the Dad Challenge podcast, a drama commentary channel that has covered KYRA extensively during her breakup saga over the past few years. KYRA responded by talking about how the details about her and Preston in Vegas had come out and the effect that had on her. Her initial reaction wasn't about the internet or any backlash, it was about their families, she said. Her first thought was, now our families are aware of our private life. She admitted that she unintentionally brought a lot of unwanted attention to Preston's family. According to KYRA, the moment everything truly fell apart for her wasn't when the threesome details surfaced online. While that was embarrassing, she said she didn't really care about people judging her for exploring her sexuality. She basically challenged anyone who disagreed by saying, "Who are you to dictate what I can or can't explore?" This whole situation began when a woman reached out to the Dad Challenge podcast, claiming she had a threesome with KYRA and Preston in Vegas. She even shared a photo of KYRA and Preston by a fountain in Vegas to support her story. This happened around 2 years ago. The woman also said that during a conversation with KYRA and Preston, they mentioned being together for a while, which contradicts the timeline KYRA has shared publicly. On top of that, the woman alleged that KYRA was once the third wheel with Preston and someone else, adding to the confusion and speculation. That's when the online drama blew up. People started questioning KYRA's honesty about the timeline and whether she really cheated on Oscar with Preston. KYRA didn't deny everything but said many details were false. What upset her the most was that this woman knew who she was the entire night and didn't say anything sooner. KYRA admitted some parts of the story were true but insisted most of it was fabricated. She didn't specify which parts were accurate but did say the claim that they all threw up that night was false, only the woman herself was sick. Other than that, she missed the chance to clear up the rumors about what happened in Vegas, leaving many questions unanswered. Regarding the emotional affair with Preston while still with Oscar, it seems KYRA finally owned up to it. Fans had been analyzing their game night videos for years, noticing their chemistry and calling it out, so it was about time she admitted it. If both she and Preston were in relationships during that emotional connection, then yes, it was an emotional affair. It's worth thinking about whether this connection with Preston gave her the strength to leave Oscar. Their relationship had its share of struggles well before the breakup, but she never left until now. Emotional affairs can provide the sense of safety and validation that's missing in one's current relationship. KYRA said Preston saw her, listened to her, and made her feel understood, things she felt were lacking. That kind of emotional support can make leaving a dysfunctional relationship feel possible. The attention from someone new can fill the emptiness growing in a troubled partnership. Though complicated and messy, that emotional connection may have been the nudge she needed to finally walk away from Oscar. In her breakup video, KYRA insisted there was no cheating, and Oscar's vague response led viewers to assume he meant Preston or someone else. But KYRA clarified that Oscar was referring to another situation where she was comforting a different guy, something she has addressed before. Then KYRA dropped a bombshell. She told Oscar she was sleeping with Preston. She said they started hooking up about 3 months after the breakup. Since they split in December, that puts the start of their physical relationship around March. She even posted online saying, "I'm dating Preston, and we've been seeing each other since March." Sometimes friends who are there for you during hard times become more. A viewer commented on how quickly things escalated, from breaking up in December to being involved with Preston by March, and pointed out that Preston and Hannah filed for divorce in April, which was finalized later. KYRA also opened up about her emotional state, admitting she was battling self-hate, had zero confidence, and felt at her lowest point. She confessed she was craving attention, though she corrected herself, saying it was more about wanting to feel loved and accepted. She quickly backtracked, saying it wasn't about seeking attention but more about wanting to feel loved and accepted. Then she mentioned that Preston had ended things with Hannah 2 months earlier. KYRA also brought up that her kids have been watching the drama and snark videos about her, and she blames those video creators for traumatizing her children. But here's the catch: why are her young kids even watching these kinds of videos? They're elementary aged, and the content isn't designed for children at all. It's really up to the parents to keep an eye on what their kids are viewing online. It's concerning that such young kids have access to these adult-focused drama channels. Instead of pointing fingers at creators, KYRA needs to set some firm boundaries and parental controls to manage what her kids see on YouTube. One viewer pointed out that just 3 months ago, KYRA posted a Q&A video featuring her 7-year-old daughter's face fully visible. Strangers were even asking the child questions. The daughter's face was on the thumbnail too, and that video racked up nearly 100,000 views, way higher than KYRA's usual videos. Meanwhile, Oscar also includes their kids in his videos, sometimes blurring their faces or covering them with emojis and thumbnails, but they're still clearly part of the content. People are calling out how KYRA once thought it was dramatic to take kids off social media, but now seems to have changed her mind. She said that after seeing a video involving her children, she called Oscar, and they agreed to remove their kids from social media. She claims they've done that and are happy with the decision, but judging by recent posts, it doesn't seem like it. The video with her daughter visible was just posted 3 months ago. KYRA also talked about the pressure kids face when they're featured in content. She shared an example of parents encouraging kids to repeat cute moments for the camera, which turns genuine interactions into rehearsed performances for views. Chad Frankie recently mentioned this too, describing how draining it was to constantly redo things to make them camera ready. This emotional strain on kids involved in family vlogging is something that doesn't get enough attention. So, despite KYRA's claims, her kids are still very much online. Why would she say otherwise? And why did Isaac give her credit for something she hasn't fully done? A viewer commented on Isaac's video saying it would have been way better if he fact-checked her every time she made a false claim. They were surprised he didn't press her on hot topics like the Hannah diss track or the ongoing pregnancy rumors. About those rumors, some think KYRA might be playing into the pregnancy speculation, purposely keeping people guessing. The photos she's sharing add fuel to the fire. Some viewers think she's rage baiting, dropping subtle hints to keep the conversation going without confirming anything. She's liked a few comments, but hasn't made a direct statement. Others suspect she's waiting to announce because she expects harsh backlash that could cost her followers, so maybe she's waiting for the right moment, or maybe the drama never ends with KYRA. Or maybe she just enjoys the spotlight a bit too much. And that's a wrap on today's deep dive. Whether you believe KYRA's finally being honest or still playing the game, one thing's clear, there's always more to the story. So let me know in the comments, do you think she's owning up, or just trying to rewrite the past? And what are your thoughts on emotional affairs? Can they really be the final push out of a broken relationship? If you made it this far, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you don't miss the next update, because you already know the drama never sleeps, and neither do we. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay curious, stay kind, and stay real.